NFL, presented by Barefoot Wines. I'm Dan Hanzus, Heroes here. Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. And yeah, we did sign new contracts earlier this year, but we've actually worked harder than ever. And that, my friends, is a sign of internal makeup.
I think it tells you who we are at the core. Are we gonna glide and float because we signed those contracts?
Right.
Most of us would not.
No.
Professionals. I think our outfits also say who we are. Marc rocking the business on top, party on the bottom, beautiful sport coat, but then the carefully ripped jeans below. I
Very careful, meticulously ripped up.
I
Hollywood Nights jeans, I call them.
I have explained to you multiple times that I own 3 pairs of jeans that are functional.
I like it.
You know
I'm
what
just
it is?
saying
It's Burbank days up top, Hollywood Nights down
I am
low.
just telling you, like, if I were not in a laundry scenario, I would never wear these jeans to work for this exact reason.
The old
now
Chris
being
Wessling explanation. Wes used to come in super dressed up for a podcast every once in a while and be like, Chris, what's going on? Why are you all of a sudden wearing khakis and a button shirt and a pullover sweater? He's like, everything else is dirty.
Because it's absolutely true. That's why.
Marc's old one would be like, I have to leave the house early and I dress in the dark. Do you remember that?
Well,
the
that
old
was
dress in the
accurate
dark
also.
maneuver.
These are true anecdotes.
I believe it to be, for men, especially men our age, you're older, Marc, obviously, but in a sartorial sense.
Only numerology from a numbers angle.
Got it.
That's what counts.
I've said it on the show before. There's a lot of self-consciousness with men, especially middle-aged men, about how they're dressed. They feel uncomfortable with it because I think it's part of getting older. And so whenever it gets brought up, it gets a little bit like, oh, but I was dressing in the dark. I don't even know what I'm wearing.
Well, that's fair. But I also think that there is a heightened element of analyzing what one wears in this room.
It happens. It happens, but it's all
It's
out of
pointed
love.
out, and it's made a thing of. So
Burbank days, Hollywood Nights. By the way, if you want to see us at night and maybe even see, can you please wear these jeans for the live show? The people need to see them.
if you remind me,
Okay.
or if I am reminded.
Around the NFL Live, the homecoming show, Wednesday, January 18th from the Bourbon Room in Hollywood. Of course, Marc has to wear the Hollywood Nights jeans in Hollywood. Doors open at 7 p.m. Tickets still available. Not too many, but they are available. Go to Ticketmaster or go to our Instagram feed. Check the link in the bio. Join us. It's going to be fun.
Very few available.
7 tickets remain. Yeah. It's like Willy Wonka. Get the golden ticket. All right, a lot to get to. No buys. It's week 16. The machine is cranking on Christmas week. Jason Horowitz. Hanukkah week. Nights. Great call by the Raiders. Wonder what Brent Musburger would have said. Imagine Musburger's jackpot, baby, after the Chandler Jones touchdown on Sunday.
No, glorious.
Musburger probably would not have said it was a Hanukkah miracle. I didn't know that was coming.
No. Can I hear Brent again? I don't know where he's. Somewhere in Vegas right now.
Jackpot, baby!
Like, I don't think Brent, who's an older man now, I don't think he survives the jackpot baby after the Chandler Jones touchdown.
No, it would have been the end.
So it's good that he didn't do it. Let's get to the games of Week 16. And usually we start with the primetime games, and we have 3 Christmas Day games this year. There's obviously the Saturday night game, the Monday night game. A reminder that me and my dad will handle the Jacksonville Jaguars, New York Jets recap. Check that out, going up late Thursday night. Let's start with the draft this week.
Like it.
I like just better games.
Yeah.
Well,
no,
because
let's-
it's Saturday, though. We're doing it in order. It is confusing. I think a lot of people will be out doing things
That's
on
true,
Christmas
too.
Eve or with their family, and they'll be like, wait, this is an NFL Sunday, but it's Saturday.
Greg, this is very much on your radar. I think this puts you in a position, whether it's from a PSA angle or getting on Twitter,
We just
getting
did it.
on. Well, no, you did it through this vehicle, but you're talking about people that maybe don't even listen to this show. How do you bring the news to the average American/international person?
Average Joe.
Right.
I'm just going to, instead of being a caroler, I'm just going to walk the streets of Los Angeles letting people know as a public service.
You're going to be arrested.
I have the first overall pick in the draft this week, and I will select the NFL Total Access Game of the Week. That's a thing, by the way. The Philadelphia Eagles at Dallas Cowboys from Jerry World. Here we go. And what a break. Not a break. It was earned, and the Cowboys didn't get it done. Last week against the Jaguars, they blow a big lead in the second half, and coupled with another Eagles win against the Bears, now there's a 3-game difference in the standings here. So the Eagles are in really good shape regardless of the outcome. They already beat the Cowboys the first time, so don't have to worry about any type of head-to-head sweep that leads to a tiebreaker issue. This team's trying to win the number 1 seed, and at 13-1, I think they need, Gregg, one more win to do it. Simple. Not so simple. They don't have their quarterback this week. Jalen Hurts, with the shoulder issue, is going to be rested, and it will be Gardner Minshew starting for the Eagles, going to Dallas. Marc, I know you've long had a warm spot in your heart for Minshew. He's a very marked player. But I am with you. We talked a little before the show started. This feels like a spot where, surrounded by all this talent, don't think that the Eagles are going to go to Dallas and get beat up here, because I think they're going to play well.
No, it's not going to like a C-grade backup where you have to completely change everything you do. I think that the Gardner Minshew pickup, which happened before this season, obviously, was another example of Howie Roseman, who's had hot and cold streaks with the Eagles, but has essentially built 2 Super Bowl contenders over the course of his run when he wasn't sent out to the back shed when Chip Kelly was there for a year and a half.
In 5 years, he's built up 2 separate
pretty
Super Bowl
crazy
teams.
because if you think about why Doug Peterson left, it was over a slight rift over having to make some coaching changes and not wanting to go through a rebuild. Well, the rebuild lasted like a year, and then you found out, oh wait, Jalen Hurts, who was on an audition a year ago, is a superstar and a potential MVP winner. I think, though, the Gardner Minshew hire was another example of how well this team is built top to bottom, because Minshew has a 41-12 touchdown to interception ratio. He had a season with the Jaguars where it was like 21 touchdowns and 6 picks. So the one thing I'd say about him is you're not going to put him in the lineup and have a bunch of wacky business going on where the Eagles can be beat if they were to turn the ball over 3 times against the Cowboys. They are really good on offense in terms of their versatility. You've got great wide receivers. I think this is a big opportunity for Miles Sanders to have a big game where I think some of his opportunities, because you have Jalen Hurts running the ball sometimes 10-plus times, you're going to lead on Miles Sanders. And Minshew's mobile as well. So I just think that this is not a fatal blow for Philly at all, and I don't think they'd see it that way.
Right. I love the Eagles +5 in this game. It was up to 6 at one point this week. That seems crazy to me. I think they have a good chance to win. Minshew has tape on the Eagles. He was 41 for 60 last year with 4 touchdowns, moved the ball, put up a lot of points against the Cowboys. Granted, there's backups playing, and it was a strange, but also had a win against the Jets. So I think we've seen he can work in this system, and I think you got to use the Cowboys' aggressiveness against them. We saw the Jaguars do it a week ago, and it got me thinking this Cowboys defense is not quite where it was early in the season. They've had some injuries, and they're not big-name players, Leighton Vander Esch, Anthony Brown, but you've seen their replacements get picked on. And you saw, who was it? Kelvin Joseph at cornerback is going to probably have to match up against Devontae Smith on the outside or A.J. Brown. That's a major mismatch. They had a linebacker come into the game for Dallas who really got picked on as well. Deron Bland's actually played pretty well for the Cowboys as a replacement, but it hasn't been the dominant Cowboys. I think you can run on this team, and we know the Eagles love to run.
Yeah, the Joseph thing is something to keep an eye on because he did get picked on last week by Trevor Lawrence, and that's going to be something the Philly's going to want to replicate. The pass rush of the Eagles is going to be a big part of this. Dak Prescott has had some issues with being loose with the football this year. A lot of turnovers in his starts. Every week now, the Eagles are picking up lots of sacks. They have 6+ sacks in 3 straight games this year. They're up to 55 sacks this year, which is closing in on the franchise record back in '89 when they had all those studs like Reggie White and Jerome Brown. So they can wreak havoc that way. One thing that's not getting a ton of love or deserves a little more credit with the Cowboys this year, their offensive line, which I know isn't at the heyday levels of a few years back, but they're getting better. Their pass protection has been great. They did not allow a sack last week.
One of the reasons I think that those takedown numbers are so high for Philadelphia is that their secondary is so stacked. I mean, Darius Slay, Bradbury, they have, against deeper passes, 10+ yards, they allow a 48.1 passer rating, which is 17 points lower than the next closest team, which is Seattle. And so you're basically clogging up all passing lanes, which is a problem for Dak Prescott. They can run the ball. They also have 14 interceptions on those type of throws. So they are a takeaway defense, and I just like the matchup for them. I am annoyed by one thing, though, because I feel like I've been out around town, and I keep seeing these, talking head shows about how Dak Prescott threw the
I'm
pick
annoyed
six
now.
to end the game last week. Well, it bounced off Noah Brown's chest, by the way. I mean, he has turned the ball over and he does force throws, but he didn't throw that pick six in a natural, like, oh, I didn't see the field and, like, it was a terrible
good play.
throw.
They should have won the game.
I mean, it just wasn't on Dak. I think it's just he's such an easy target.
Go ahead.
I don't know.
Tell the people out there, watch the game.
Well, I just did. I said,
But just say it directly.
Go watch the play. Please go watch the play and tell me if the wide receiver, if it bouncing off the chest of another
Before
human
you tell me
has
that
something
Dak
to do
choked
with it.
in overtime,
Right.
Go watch the play.
There you go.
The offensive line you mentioned for the Cowboys.
We've done our job here.
That has played really well, especially on the ground, and I think that's how they win this game. I think both teams are better when they play with the lead and can run, and I think the Cowboys will be able to run on Philadelphia, although their run defense has improved. There have been a lot of changes. I mean, last week, Tyron Smith, a future Hall of Famer, people throw that out pretty easily. I think with Tyron Smith, it's safe. They now have potentially 3 future Hall of Famers on this offensive line, which
seems good.
Which is crazy with Zach Martin and Jason Peters now mixing it. But Tyron Smith is playing right tackle out of nowhere. He's never played right tackle before. I think they're going to keep that going. Jason Peters is mixing in at the different tackle positions. It's a bigger test this week of this new setup with the guys playing different position against Philadelphia. And I do want to say I think CeeDee Lamb is one guy that can make this Philadelphia secondary, that can win matchups. Like, I just love what CeeDee Lamb is giving them, and I think Dak played well last week. I still like the Cowboys to win this game, but I just feel like it's a coin flip.
Yeah, I'm a little – my radar's up about the Cowboys right now. There's a whiff of something familiar around them as the season reaches – regular season is reaching its conclusion. This is kind of like a show-me game for the Cowboys. Like, you did get a gift here with Jalen Hurts out. I know Minshew's a good backup, but he's not even close to Jalen Hurts and what this offense is when they have their guy. Go win this game in your building.
Yeah, I mean, if you lose,
Go win it.
You nearly lost to the Texans. You were outshined by the Jaguars, which was notable to me. And I get it. If you don't go beat a Jalen Hurts-free Eagles team, I'm just not sure what we say about the Cowboys other than they're a playoff team that probably will be offed as in every other Cowboys playoff team.
Show us that that's not going to be your fate again this year.
Around the NFL is brought to you by Verizon, the network America relies on.
Up next in the draft is Gregg Rosenthal.
It is a bizarre week of games here. We have 7 early. I'm not going to take one. I'm going to take 49ers Commanders late because I just want one of the 2 late games. And right now the 49ers.
What am I supposed to do during the
You just hang out.
Wrap your gifts.
Because we're also
For
going to
your
be in our
sons.
residences, our homes. So
Yes.
I mean, I could get up to anything I want to do. Basically,
You could just watch the games and contribute to the
Pet the
conversation
mystery cat.
equally. I think it doesn't
from the Friday
change
Fun
that
Show.
much.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to take it because, and I'm pulling a fast one here. I told the producers I was taking a different game. I changed my mind mid-sentence, and they're just on
they're
the ball.
scrambling over there.
You
They're
can
pretty
watch
good.
this on YouTube if you're not listening or you want to double up, see what we're wearing, see Marc's jeans. Maybe he'll stand up at
Hollywood
the end of the
Nights.
show.
They're under the table.
The 49ers, to me, are just kind of must-watch each week. I love this Purdy experience because I think this is a perfect game for them. I don't think they'll be tested overall, and they do need to keep winning to try to go get the 2 seed. But they certainly will be tested when they're on offense. And I think the interior line of the 49ers has really played better than you would expect throughout the course of the season. But, man, adding Arik Armstead to this defensive line at this point in the season feels like one of the best additions out there because Armstead really wasn't himself early in the year. Then he has this injury. He comes back, and he was a monster last week. And I'd love to see what Purdy and the offense for the 49ers does against Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne and Montez Sweat and Chase Young might be back. So it's kind of like a perfect matchup against a Commanders team. I think they'll get Purdy on the move. He throws better on the move than Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to be better, but he does some things better, and I think he throws better on the move.
And since you brought it up, it made me think of the last vital play of that game last week when Purdy, was a pass play. He scrambles to the right. He gets the first down. I'm just like, does Jimmy G make that play? I'm not saying that Purdy's a better player than Jimmy G.
No, I don't think so.
But I think he's adding a little bit more athleticism to the position, and if he's going to be able to hit passes like Jimmy G, like he's done so far, they're cooking here.
Over his 2 games, the 49ers have a 5.29 offensive EPA per game, and that is the highest of any starting quarterback ever during the Kyle Shanahan Niners era. I mean, I know it's a 2-game sample size, but he's looked the part. It hasn't been an aberration or like they're playing around him. It's the complete opposite. He's been totally aggressive. I do think like there's an opportunity for Washington. They're the 4th run defense in DVOA. I'm not sure any of that matters when you're playing the Niners because they just find a way to destroy you one way or another. And Christian McCaffrey like fits in so well with this team. And then I look at their defense and it's like, yeah, Washington, I would have said they had no chance on that Monday night game going in against the Eagles. They would be flattened by that team, and they found a way to hang around. I mean, I guess that's their move, but you got Nick Bosa, who to me, outside of Micah Parsons, looks like the defensive player of the year. He leads the league in sacks. They've added Armstead. They've just been dominant. They haven't allowed more than 17 points in a game going back to week 7, I believe. Yes, and they have allowed, and they're statistically the same defense, if not better, than the 1984 defense that beat Dan Marino in the Super Bowl.
The Commanders are heavy underdogs this week. Home for the Browns, home for the Cowboys, who may or may not be playing for anything that week. Probably really won't.
Right.
There's a real chance here they go 1-2 and miss the playoffs, and there's a chance they go 0-3. It is nothing is guaranteed for this Commanders team.
The loss obviously against the Giants was a killer for them because it removed any wiggle room, and now they have a tough schedule. So I don't expect Washington to pull this off. I'm just checking out a New York Times playoff picture percentage breakdown. They have them at a 41% chance to make the playoffs.
Feels right.
Giants up to 88% chance now. So there you go. They need this game. And, I'm with you on the 49ers. It's just like they're an interesting team to watch right now because they already were a compelling team that was talented and well-coached and obviously feels a little overdue for a Super Bowl win. And now that you've added this Purdy element to it, their story just got a lot more interesting. It got a little more Hollywood on top of it. So it's just a fun team to follow
you asked
right now.
like a couple weeks ago, like what's the variance here? Is they fall off a cliff or Purdy becomes this sort of Super Bowl hero that is one of the greatest sports stories around? And it's like, we're trending towards the totally unlikely side of that spectrum.
Oh, no, media night. The huge circle of people around Purdy. 700 questions about being Mr. Irrelevant.
Or here's another option for media night: Jerry Jones.
Ew.
I'll take Purdy.
By the way, Nick Bosa is now.
Jerry would be pretty good at this stage of the game on a media night too.
Do I need 2 straight weeks of it? No, I don't.
I would love either one of those teams in the Super Bowl. I think the NFC we're getting a fun team no matter what, a bizarre team no matter what. I'm intrigued.
I think you might miss Jerry when he's gone.
I don't.
He's a character.
I won a Cowboys Super Bowl
before.
before.
2 straight weeks of it. I can
too
take
late.
Jerry Jones in doses.
Don't you want it once though? We haven't had it. I want it.
I had it
I
once
would love
in
a
the
Cowboys
90s.
Super Bowl. It'd be exciting.
I was alive in 1994, Greg. I don't know where you were.
Quickly,
Or
Nick
93,
Bosa.
92.
Well, we weren't covering football. I'm just saying
Speak for yourself.
covering it.
You're at Camp Happiness by the lake.
back
Roasting
then
s'mores.
I would make my own. I made my own football magazine on a dot matrix printer in my room, so I was covering it to some degree.
Nerd alert.
Well, it was nerdy. I didn't have a car. I couldn't drive.
I would love to see those. Actually, I think I have. Did you bring them in once?
No, I don't have them on hand. They're in a box in my parents' house somewhere.
Oh, win Marc's old football magazines would be a good off-season game show.
I noticed this week Nick Bosa is now the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year over Parsons. That's one of the races I'm watching nice and closely. The
I think
last
that's
3
fair,
weeks,
though, don't you?
I think it's fair. I think it's a coin flip. I would maybe take Parsons right now, but 49ers
That's why
fans
you
don't
have
like
that
to
1
hear.
through 5
But
vote, though. That's what's
you
good about
don't
that.
for defense,
Oh,
though.
you
It's
don't. Well,
only
that's
MVP,
right.
which is annoying. But yeah, I wouldn't have a problem. I think these last 3 weeks are big.
I don't like to circle back, but 2 things. Parsons did miss practice this week with an illness. And did you mention that Calvin Joseph is benched?
No, I didn't know that.
He, Dan Quinn said Monday that there's a competition now to determine who will play cornerback opposite Trayvon Diggs. So they're scrambling now. And the guy that they identified to replace Anthony Brown didn't work out. So that is, Minshew is licking his chops there. But we got to spin forward through that game, through the second game to Marc Sessler.
I'll just say this, we're nobody's underdog.
Yeah, Zaddy. 3rd pick, Marc Sessler.
I'm just like this. It's Christmas time. I want to give myself gifts, things that I'd actually want. So I'm going to go Buffalo, Chicago.
That's what Christmas is about.
Give myself gifts that I want. Well, that's how I operate. I'm not saying that's the actual mold that other people should follow.
Yes. It is better to receive than to give.
In some cases
Christmas.
it is.
Why
Here we go
Buffalo
with
at Chicago?
the quarterbacks. It's really easy for me. I mean, I think I want to see, for me, it's the trajectory of watching Josh Allen down the stretch, they got into a bit of trouble against the Dolphins, obviously. I thought Miami made that a game where you needed Josh Allen suddenly when the snow started to fall to take over that thing. And I love that just a couple years ago he was considered a hazardous draft pick that could have gone all over the map. And to watch what he did, 381 yards, 4 touchdowns, and you're going to get the fumbles with Josh Allen. I think it's just sort of part of his game this year. It's not going to be as pristine as it was under the heights of Brian Dable, perhaps. So it's like I'm willing to live with the turnovers here and there when it's not killing them, because he'll flip around and do the 44-yard run and dive for the 2-point conversion that no one else can do. And then it's like, all right, so on the flip side, why do I pick the Bears? Obviously, like, no matter what, Justin Fields is surrounded by really nothing in the passing game. Like, their wide receiver group is absurd. And it doesn't really seem to matter. He's unstoppable on the ground. And I wanted to see, can Buffalo, it's a great test. They might have to deal with some mobile quarterbacks down the stretch here. Like, can you stop Justin Fields? Because no one else can. Watching him absolutely destroy last week, it's like he just every week is going to do 3 or 4 things that makes the Bears, they're suddenly in a game they shouldn't be in, I feel like, every week because of him, simply because of him.
Their defense also showed up for the first time in about 3 months after their bye, and I do think it's interesting to watch teams after their bye. They often fix some things. They're also a little healthier on defense, not on offense. You mentioned the receiver group. Claypool is out. Equanimous St. Brown is out. Tevin Jenkins, who's played well for them on their offensive line, is out. So Cody Whitehair might be out also up front. So it's like they have really lost weapons, and I just want Fields to get to the end of the season here without getting hurt. I would say with Allen, the same is true, and this is a perfect test because they should be able to put up 30-plus points. But you mentioned it. On the other side of the ball, Khalil Herbert's coming back for Chicago. They have Herbert, Montgomery, Fields. Buffalo got pushed around a little bit against Miami in the run game, and that was kind of an old Sean McDermott thing. If this defense had a hole, it was in run defense. It hasn't been a problem this year, but this is a great test for them.
And I thought last week was a perfect test for the Bills and their ability to kind of look a loss in the eye on Saturday night, down 8 points in the fourth quarter against a good opponent and find a way to win that game. I moved – it's all kind of silly. But in the power rankings, I moved the Bills 1 spot ahead of the Bengals this week, flopped them basically 3 and 4 because I was just like, I just think when it comes down to it this year, Josh Allen's not going to be denied.
Like, that's more about Buffalo than Cincinnati.
Well, they get to play in next week. So
and Allen specifically in their ability, and that's such a huge – when you look at where these teams stack up, Buffalo's at 11-3, Chiefs at 11-3. Buffalo has the tiebreaker on the Chiefs. But guess what? If things hold into next week and Cincinnati's 10-4 – and they beat Buffalo, then they both have 4 losses, and Cincinnati has that tiebreaker in their head-to-head.
They just need to win out the Bengals to get the 1 seed.
They're the Ravens, though, after Buffalo.
And 1 Chiefs loss.
What does that even mean anymore?
I don't know. It may mean nothing, but it's just if you get Lamar, it's a division game. The Bengals got one of these teams tagged with a tougher final 3 games here.
Absolutely, but it's pretty simple for them. If they could win out, they just need 1 Chiefs loss, and they get the number 1 seed. So it is fascinating. These 3 teams have really pulled ahead of the pack, and yet I still feel like any Justin Fields game feels a little dangerous right now.
Just looking forward to him having a team around him.
By the way, just
stay healthy.
I would just note that the Chiefs, for your 1-loss business, they got the Seahawks, but then they got the Broncos and Raiders. So something would really need to go wrong.
I think the Raiders would. It's crazy. Would
That's
be
in Vegas.
The best chance there, just because it's a division game. But you're right. They'll be, and should be, heavily favored in every game.
And we've been talking about the Bears in this way, which for several weeks, which really is a credit, obviously, to Fields. They lose literally every week. They've lost 7 straight games. So
they have the
they're
second,
all like
they have
one
the second
score,
overall
though.
pick right now.
It's
They've
crazy.
got more cap space than anyone.
It's kind of been
3-11.
It's kind of been perfect. Other than that Jets game, they're always in these games, and they always lose them.
All right, let's take a break, and we will roll on. Welcome back. In case you're just joining us, Marc Sessler, Burbank up top, Hollywood down low. He might even show you his pants at the end of the show. Some people talk, but definitely if you go to the live show.
Well, I'd say we should make it. It's a live show.
Yeah, you know what?
Situation.
You don't get the pants.
No, you don't get to see it.
But if you go to Hollywood, on January 18th in the Bourbon Room and see ATN live.
All our listeners on the East Coast or in the UK or
They're like
Australia.
furiously like kayak.com, AmericanAirlines.com. How do we get there?
Well, let's motivate
Our
them
Australian
to do
listeners hit me up recently. They're number 4. Shout out to Australia.
Well,
Big
get
fan
here.
base there.
Get here. Anyway, you're up, Mark.
All right, like I said, I'm picking games that I want to watch when I be home on the
That's
couch on that
typically how we
Saturday.
do this.
Saints at Browns.
I knew this was coming.
Can I tell you a weird reason? Like you could probably guess 5 reasons why you'd think I'd pick this, and I'll tell you why I really.
You're back to being a Browns fan.
No, not at all. Like I love watching the Saints outdoors in cold weather. I just love seeing them thrown out of the dome.
Plus, the Browns are your favorite team.
They are not. It is going to be. I heard this.
Plus, they were your favorite team for 35 years, and it's hard to let go of that.
Well, that is true, but I mean. Things have changed, and I'm on a break from them right now, so we'll see what happens.
Thank you for saying that.
It was Andrew Siciliano in our newsroom who announced loudly that it's going to be 62-mile-per-hour wind gusts in Cleveland.
Andrew said something loud?
Well, he does. I think he likes to prepare for his show.
He's got a booming broadcaster's voice.
Sit near him, and
Yes.
it's great to sit near him, and we have discussions about things.
I love Andrew.
I sometimes think of Andrew like as a 3-year-old, just like having a conversation with his mom, just like, "Oh, what would you like? I would like cereal." Like he just, even as a young
He's
child,
an avid listener to this show, Greg. So he's going to hear what
that
you
was
just said.
slightly offensive, actually.
No,
And
I was
Andrew,
just saying.
apologize
I
on
think he
behalf
was
of the
born
podcast.
with this beautiful, booming broadcaster voice. That you had that for birth. is
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
can
saying.
imagine. Oh, so the voice was the same when he was 3 years old.
Right.
He's
Now
not
the-
now.
I
with
messed up
operating
there.
like
Makes
a
sense.
3-year-old.
At first, it made it.
I didn't execute it.
No.
You made him sound like he's an infant
Yeah.
as a
I
man.
didn't
Which is not
execute it.
typically taken well by a man.
Let's just move forward. We love you.
He's probably jogging right now while he listens to this. I don't know. I want to see, I guess from a Cleveland angle, each week is a little bit more of what does this offense want to be? I think that they've kind of lost their way with Watson in there. He's averaging 6.47 air yards per attempt, which is down almost 3 air yards, 2.5 from where he was with the Texans. So, I mean, we know that he's getting, back into the groove of things here. I think that it's thrown their run game off. It's weird that, watching that Ravens game again, wait a minute, suddenly I know the Ravens are compromised on offense massively, but the Browns defense has been, they've shown up a couple weeks here. They're a different defense right now. Denzel Ward, I thought, played his best game of the year against Baltimore. Myles Garrett, it's not just Myles Garrett at this point. He really, really is. I know he would never be Defensive Player of the Year because they've been a bad defense, but individually, he's had, I think, his best season. I really do. Nick Chubb was a question mark. It sounds like he will practice. I think that's essential for them. And when it comes to the Saints, I know that they're a very frustrating team to their fan base right now with massive questions because I don't think you have a coach or a quarterback going into next season. I mean, you definitely don't. I don't like the coach situation, and I'm not sure what happens. You could keep Andy Dalton around as a fill-in-the-blank backup, but what are we really selling anyone there? But you do have, quietly, in Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Juwan Johnson, the makings of a really good wide receiver group. And so each week it seems like I'm looking up, and Andy Dalton is not the Andy Dalton that I knew for a long time. He's like a deep ball thrower in this offense at times, and quite intriguing and kind of comfortable in his own skin version of Andy Dalton. So
He's played very clean.
Yeah, and he's used to this weather. So let's see what happens in Cleveland.
I mean, yeah, the weather is hard to imagine overcoming to have a great passing game. Although you never know in these games, like Philly, Chicago, Hurts was throwing the ball down the field with a sprained shoulder, and it was 15 degrees. So I guess you never know. The Saints can't really run the ball, though, and you do feel like the better running team wins this game, so I trust the Browns more. You're right, the defense has looked better. Part of that is you played Huntley and the Texans, but they also made life very difficult on the Bengals in that game. I felt like the Bengals were lucky to end up winning that game convincingly. They had to work really hard for what they got. And so there's some optimism for whichever team wins this game. This is essentially an elimination game for these two teams. The Saints, especially if they could win, have a somewhat realistic path to surviving till
Any
week
win
18.
by an NFC South team in December at this point
Is huge.
puts them in a driver's seat.
It's immense.
But to the same point, and I think this is going to be doomsday for the Saints because
agree.
they lose to Cleveland, which I expect them to do here, and the Bucs beat a third-string quarterback in Arizona. That's it. They're eliminated from contention, and you can take at least one team out of the mix in the NFC South this year. I've seen too much inconsistency in general from the Saints this year to expect them
They're maddening.
to take that win and then build on it with a big road win in bad conditions, a dome team. I just don't see it.
I just think Cleveland, from a record angle, if you win this, you're 7-8. You got the Commanders. All right, I think anyone could beat the Commanders on the right day. And then you've got the Steelers, which they match up pretty well with the Steelers.
Much of the AFC race, in terms of the sketchier, lower teams, amounts to them needing the Dolphins and or the Chargers to lose 2 out of 3. And then if they do, it comes down to tiebreakers and which team it is. I think that's realistic, that either the Dolphins or the Chargers could lose 2 out of 3, or maybe even all 3. I think the Browns, the winner of this game is going to be in it. But the offense, to your point, Mark, yeah, it's much worth it with Watson. They were 5th in passing, 4th in offense with Brissett. They're 22nd in passing, 24th in offense with Watson.
It's a markedly visually different team.
And remember, when we're talking all these AFC permutations, some of those brutal Cleveland losses, like, for instance, the one to the Jets, they don't have the tiebreaker there. So there's so many things that have to go right for Cleveland to get in. But start by winning all these games. And Andy Dalton, winless on the road in 4 starts, and they've averaged 15 points per game in those road games.
PFF's number 2 quarterback this year in passing grade. The Dalton-a-sance has happened quietly, very quietly.
Well, with all due respect to PFF, some of the quarterback situations, it's to the eye is Andy Dalton that? I get where they're coming from.
PFF's going to want to keep this one under their hat.
I get it, though. He's played clean, and they just don't ask him to do much, so he never makes any mistakes.
To your point of Andy Dalton on the road or outside, go watch him in that Steelers game. That was that. You're going to get that every third game, too.
I love PFF, but some things you keep under the hat.
We love them. We adore them.
There's a glitch in the algorithm here.
Yeah.
Let's just keep this one under the mat. Gregg, you're up.
Am I? I'm taking the Around the NFL team, better known as the team of Around the NFL. It's the Lions.
The 3-year-old adult.
The Panthers.
I take Round NFL team the.
It's like I'm already on Christmas vacation here. What is happening? Sometimes I forget we're even recording. I am so happy.
That's what makes it a good show, though. Just 3 guys chopping it up. Just like 3 buddies in a bar.
It's that's the show right there. They're just friends. The football stuff is they're fine. I mean, these guys, it's like they're just buddies. It's that's the show. I am so excited Marc didn't take this. It was maybe a strategic error by myself to even let it sit out there. I love this Lions team. I love the way the defense tackles, and I think that shows up big this week because this Panthers team couldn't get the running game going last week. They count on a lot of yards after the catch. And this secondary for the Lions, maybe they're not great in coverage. They're okay. But the pass rush has been showing up. But when you get a ball out on the edge, or whether it's the running game or not, if it's Akuda, if it's one of the safeties, if it's the linebackers like Rodrigo, if it's Aiden Hutchinson in the running game, they just play with great energy and they tackle really well. And it can be underrated, but you can just look at it and you can see it. And I think the way that they're going to lose this season at some point is a great passing attack exposes them. And I just don't see that with Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold has stabilized this Panthers offense. I think he's been the best quarterback they've had this year. You got to give him some credit. He's not making huge mistakes. He's had some nice throws.
Darnold.
But they're so unaggressive in terms of the way they call games compared to the Lions, who are aggressive in every situation. That's why I love them on the road this week. That's why I'm locking up the team of Around the NFL.
Very good.
Well, this is a problem. This has not worked out in the past for me, but I alerted our production team that I am also locking up the Lions. But I feel, Gregg, I think it's our chance to get
the Lock Bros. Are you guys Lock Bros?
We've won 2. We won last time. We won a couple in a row. I think
we lost.
I think you're
you
wrong.
guys
Maybe
the
we
Lock
lost
Daddies
at some point.
Or the Lock Bros? What were you guys?
I don't even know if we had a trenchant nickname. I mean, we have to come up with one after we win this.
It's like when a Hollywood studio takes 2 real heavyweight stars and just sticks them together in a production and be like, oh, that will work. But you need chemistry, and I think when you guys lock up, there's something off in the mix.
Like
and that's why
you would like this to be true, but the whole we're on a roll here. You guys are sinking in this lock competition because of games that you agreed on, taking 2 big L's. Whereas I at least remember the last time we did it, we were fine, Marc.
I feel confident that I don't like locking up with you because you're in the lead spot,
that's
so
true.
Nothing changes. And the other thing is, Gregg, you typically by Sunday regret locking with another human. So it's like
I didn't know. I made the first pick here, and it was time to.
And let it be known, the
pick.
last time that Marc and I locked together, that was waved off as an issue because Marc was out that week, and we didn't have a chance to vibe before
It's a
we made
vibe
the
thing.
lock
No, it's
together.
really sort of we just could look at each other's eyes, and we know that it's
Lock Bros
time
didn't
to
get
hit
a
the
chance
gas.
to lock
I've
eyes.
checked the stats.
Yeah.
Last time Marc and I locked together was a successful Bengals over Steelers.
All right, so here we go. We're on a roll. You could say it factually.
I like the lock. I have to say, the Panthers kind of spooked me last week, in that just when people are starting to buy in on maybe they're the NFC South team that can have their dignity playing in January football, they let Pittsburgh basically beat them at their own game. They were more physical. They played better defense, and in general, it was just like, oh guys, you gotta beat the Mitch Trubisky team in your building with a chance to tie for first place in the NFC South. So I lost a lot of faith in them here. At the same time, is their defense good enough to really slow down the Detroit attack? Now, the Jets did it last week, but it really depends how much you believe in Carolina's ability to do that, and whether you think the Lion win, while impressive, and how it ended and how they came back and closed out the Jets there, they did not look very good in that game on offense for the first time in a while.
I mean, Carolina is 4th in points allowed since week 10. So I think their defense has been pretty consistent. I think they've responded to Steve Wilkes really well, who I think should flat out just get that job. But I don't know how you stop what Detroit's doing right now. And I think it's kind of like if you're Brad Holmes, the Lions GM, because you mentioned some of these guys, like Aiden Hutchinson worked out. He's working out. Malcolm Rodriguez is working out. James Houston has 1 or more sacks in his last 4 games. That's just like a stat outlier.
Kirby
for these
Joseph's
guys.
a rookie. Has been great for them.
Well, think about this. Along with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is, if he were playing somewhere else, would be massively celebrated. Jamison Williams is getting a few more. At some point here, they're going to let him play like a full helping. And they're starting to look at like this team. They kind of remind me of like the 1991 Cowboys, where outside of the Goff quarterback position, I mean, even he's playing well. I'll tell you why, because it's like they were so young. And it was really just a team that had been formed in the last 2 or 3 seasons under Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones. But suddenly you saw the formula come together, and they became dominant at the things they were good at. And then the next season they won the Super Bowl. I'm not saying this is the Lions, but there's so many young pieces in place that will be here for a really long time. They've got high draft picks because of the Goff thing, and the Goff thing's working out better than Matthew Stafford right now outside of a Super Bowl ring.
Can Steve Wilkes kind of muddy the
outside of a Super Bowl ring?
Well, I'm saying the
Quite a
Rams.
caveat.
The Rams got what they wanted out of it, but the Rams are in full-fledged
They
chaos
both won,
right now.
but they
Yeah,
both
they both
won that
won.
trade.
They both won
but
big.
no one thought Detroit won it with Goff, though. That's all.
You're
when
right.
it happened.
They are winning big on both sides. Can Steve Wilkes kind of muddy the picture for Goff and make him hold the ball? He did not play well in the cold last week. You're right. When you get him to hold the ball and try to make a play off timing, it can get rough. And that's why I'm throwing a little fantasy nug out. I love me some DeAndre Swift this week in your fantasy leagues or DFS, because you can see the big DeAndre Swift day coming. The explosiveness is back. It hasn't totally resulted in numbers. And you looked at this Panthers team a week ago. They got pushed around. They were dominated in that game on the ground. And so I think the Lions going to go run the ball. A lot of Swift this week.
And I think Ben Johnson, who's having a great year at offensive coordinator, I think he could get a job, a big chair this January. And Dan Campbell have done a good job with Swift since he's coming back and looking better. They're not overworking him. He's part of the puzzle, not the piece that they're using.
I mean, they're
as a
playing for
workhorse.
January. They're going to unleash him in January.
Absolutely. Chicago going 3rd overall.
And I know what
Saints at Cleveland, Detroit at Carolina. How about Giants at Vikings? How about the G-Men coming off a very, very big win on Sunday night? Now, did they get some help from the Zebras? They sure did. But that does not mean.
Yeah, I would say they did.
That does not mean you take away, you take anything or everything away from them, because I saw a lot of that early season DNA in this game, and that the drive that stands out to me more than any other drive in the game that made me think, oh, okay, they might now have kind of recalibrated things and be able to take this and get to the playoffs, was before the controversial game-ending drive, but after Heineke put it on the ground and Ron Rivera saying to himself, this guy's terrible. Why does everybody like him so much? And the Giants took the ball back, and it was 4th quarter, and they needed to chew some clock and get some points, but just kind of get things stabilized here before the defense lost the game. And they just gave it to Saquon over and over, and he just ran through people over and over. And before you knew it, they kicked the field goal that allows them to hold on and win that game. And just that's important. It's Saquon's healthy or looks healthy, and the Giants now have that taste of victory again. Playing a Minnesota team that, what the hell, man? You don't know what to expect in this game because you never know what to expect.
But
with the
you
Vikings.
do because they're 10-0 in one possession games. So it's like even when they were losing to the Colts that way, it's like of course they're going to. Every one of these games comes down to total.
At 33-0 or whatever it was.
I will say one thing, and you don't have to believe me, but we were texting. I didn't see this text till later, but Dan, you said right before the half, if the Vikings can just get a touchdown here, and it happened later too.
Right.
But you were like, there was this confidence.
I was joking, but I was also kind of serious in the sense that like, if there's one team, well, if there's two teams that could pull this thing off.
Right.
It was the Vikings on one side and the Colts on the other.
The Colts scored one offensive touchdown in that game? I mean, you want to talk about this? The Giants were the most helped by the Zebras last week. And the Vikings, yes, they won, but they had 2 touchdowns taken away that clearly should have been scores.
You know what? That's a great point. Not only did the Colts have the biggest collapse in NFL history, they also were the most helped by officiating. And they still lost the game. They got 14 points taken off the board by bad calls, and they still lost. And they had a 33-0 lead.
So Jeff Saturday, this has been floated out there, and it's kind of remarkable that, obviously 6 weeks ago he was doing what we do. Then he gave up the biggest comeback in NFL history, which wiped away Frank Reich's biggest comeback of all time. Front number 1. But then 2, the week before against Dallas, they gave up the most points in a quarter. They gave up 33, and then they were up 33-0, and then they gave that up and gave the game up. It's like Jeff Saturday's resume is insane.
I think one thing about the framing that was going around a lot, like, oh man, the Colts, how much they're doing Reich so dirty. I was like, Frank Reich probably is way into this. That was a humiliating franchise loss for the Colts. Yeah. I know that, and his win was in the playoffs against a great Oilers team.
No one's forgetting his win.
And that was a great day for Frank Reich.
I love that he called Kirk Cousins this week to talk about it and say, like, use this for good, essentially. People still come up to me and it's
Frank
like
did?
It's like a great example to talk to other people about like never give up in life. And
you think Cousins will do that too? I think he seems like he's not going to use it for evil.
I could see him speaking at like youth ministry camps.
Yeah, exactly.
For the next 30 years.
Well, Reich said that. That's why he called him. Is that he knows Kirk has a strong Christian faith.
It's not Johnny Manziel.
No, he said it. I mean,
I know.
And
I'm
Reich,
saying we know this league so well that like that's exactly what he then said.
Right. Reich as well. I am curious about this matchup though for Kirk. Kirk versus the Blitz. His numbers are terrible this year. They haven't been throughout his career like most veteran quarterbacks who can usually figure things out. But I think according to PFF, he's like 3rd worst quarterback in the league against the blitz, against a heavy blitz team, which suddenly has 2 great edge rushers in Thibodeau and Ojulari, who's really popped. Both of those guys are playing their best ball right now. So you add that to a heavy blitz team against Kirk, you could have some wild stuff.
The one thing is they play a ton of man coverage, and Cousins and Justin Jefferson has been dominant against everything, but they have dominated man coverage. So that I think if you can you somehow offset the blitz somehow and the rush. Like I just think it's a game where they can be who they are.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Giants, we talk about the Vikings 10-0 in one-score games. The Giants are 8-2-1, so they've been very good in these types of games too. And this one is like one of the hardest games to figure out because I could definitely see a scenario where the Vikings run the Giants out of the building because I still don't necessarily believe
their
in the Giants.
offense is the best group in the game. So.
And Jefferson and Cousins, I think they're looking to set records. Jefferson breaking the all-time receiving record. He'll have another big game, I think, here. I do think that this is a game where the Vikings take care of business, but I can't say that the other side of this.
You're not locking it up, I don't think.
I'm certainly not locking it up because if this game, there's also a coin flip where this game goes down to the last possession because that's kind of what both these teams do.
That even if you go back through like the last 3 seasons, the Vikings lead the league in one-score games. This year's obviously been like the waterfall, but like they've been this team in a weird way. It's like I'm not hanging around waiting for the Minnesota blowout to happen.
They can clinch this week too. The Giants. It's crazy. They get a win, and then either a Washington loss, I believe, or a Lions loss, and they're in if they get 2 of those teams. I also want to see just quickly in this matchup Daniel Jones because I think he's playing well right now, and he's had a lot of tough matchups. He's working so hard to get what he gets. You don't have to work that hard against this Vikings defense. So I think you could have a nice little Daniel Jones game.
And we're going to drive, friends, into the woods of Foxborough to check in on the New England Patriots, 7-7, coming off one of the worst losses you will ever see. You kind of forget, because of the Chandler Jones lateral thing, that they had a 7-point lead in this game prior to that, and Derek Carr and the Raiders were facing a 4th and 10 deep in their own end on that drive that led to the touchdown pass. So that is a backbreaking loss potentially for a team that's really feels like it's been on the ropes, perhaps internally, with all the consternation about the offensive scheme and the coaching and where Mac Jones' head is at. And speaking of Mac Jones, this was interesting. On Wednesday, a reporter had a question about, the near future, not the long-term future, the near future of the quarterback position in New England.
Bill, is the plan to stick with Mac here at quarterback for the final 3 weeks?
Yeah, let's try to beat Cincinnati.
I don't know what I said. What did he say?
Something about Cincinnati.
We're just trying to beat Cincinnati.
Yeah.
His eyebrows.
The plan is to beat Cincinnati.
I wish our listeners could see that, because first of all, Bill looks like he's in good shape.
He looks good. He's taking care of himself.
He's showing off the biceps. Yeah. He actually had a big smile right before that question. Then the question comes out, and his eyebrows raised. He was totally surprised by it, and then total grimace. I'm not answering this. I've heard that Robert Kraft is kind of Simmons threw out there. I don't know if this is accurate, but Bill Simmons threw out there that Kraft was a Zappy guy, that he's been pushing for Zappy.
Well, listen to that crowd.
Bill doesn't care about that, though. But well, here's interesting, because I think I talked to Ian about this, because before Ian joined NFL Network Rap Sheet, he covered the Patriots for the Boston Herald. And there's a whole hierarchy. In fact, I did talk to him about it, and I found it fascinating. A hierarchy in terms of who gets to ask Bill the type of questions, when Bill kind of lets you into the circle in terms of giving you a real answer or some type of stock answer, or ignoring you outright, or maybe the Pats media guy has to rough you up a little bit, not physically, but perhaps. We don't know where those ball boys are, for instance.
He's a tough PR guy.
Yeah, under the Mass Pike, perhaps, from Deflategate. But anyway, what I was taken by there is who asked the question? Was that guy allowed to ask the question? Did Bill's eyebrows raise because he was surprised that guy asked the question when he's not allowed? Or was it a guy that is allowed to ask that question and he was just surprised he got it in that moment? But when you just clear all that other stuff out, the question was, his first-round pick in 2021, Mac Jones, who went to the playoffs last year and won 10 games as a rookie, the quarterback for the last 3 games of the season, and the coach's answer was, we're trying to beat the Bengals this week.
I mean, first
what
of
is
all,
up with that?
I don't know. That
You're
reporter,
on to Cincinnati.
That reporter may not exist at this point, depending on where they are in this hierarchy.
Right.
I just think that if you look at what's happened, because this Patriots team that is scoring the second fewest points of the Bill Belichick era in New England, going back to 2000, they've looked bad. Instead of what's so different to me is that Mac Jones, unlike the previous quarterbacks, has been so emotive, and there's been these spats and these incidents, and it's so clear how frustrated he is, and he's not hiding it at all. And in fact, I think most people would look at Mac Jones and say, we're siding with Mac Jones here. Yeah, maybe you don't want your quarterback blowing up on the sideline emotionally week after week, but he seems to be in a really bad situation, in a fix, in a Patriots coaching staff that to me feels out of control. I can never remember feeling this way about a New England team, but they feel out of control, and it's happening on a weekly basis. So I would not be surprised in the Bailey Zappi world of things that Bill Belichick's get this thing out of my face at some point. I'm just not convinced Mac Jones, when we're sitting here in April, May, June, I'm not convinced Mac Jones is even on this roster. I'm just not.
Right.
Spicy, Marc.
Here's the thing, though, that you're right. The ending overshadowed everything that went on in that game, and it seemed like Mac Jones had one of the worst games of his career. And then you rewatch it, and so many of the routes are just terribly run. The spacing, Greg Bedard's been sending this out, where there's 3 guys clustered together routinely. The situational football where you can't score from the one, you have so many pre-snap penalties. They lost that game because
timeouts,
of how they handled the end of half and end of game situations. They are so sloppy. I heard Bill talking about the Bengals earlier this week. We have the clip. It's short, but I think the Bengals are the type of team that Bill Belichick wishes he was.
Play a good, clean game, and so make you earn everything. So that's what we're going to have to do.
over and over in this press conference, he kept saying how they're clean. They don't lose games.
Loquacious.
They let other teams lose games, and I think he knows in his heart that used to be us. And listening to it, and I listened to his press conference because I started thinking we could be running out of Bill Belichick press conferences here as a member of the Patriots. I think this is a real thing. I think someone is telling all these media members, let's name them, Peter King, Albert Breer, Karen Grugian of the Boston Herald, Tom Curran, Greg Bedard, I think that's it, has floated out some sort of version of if Bill Belichick doesn't make changes to the offensive staff and or the front office because he's just trying to do everything, then there could be a change. I got a pretty good guess where that information is coming from. It's coming from the highest parts of the Patriots organization.
Yeah, but at the same time, like,
you trying to smoke Bill out through the media? That seems like a bad idea.
Wouldn't the plan be to hand it off to Steve Belichick?
No.
Well, let me just say,
I don't know if he could have his
that's
way.
Bill's plan. I don't think
he had his
that's
way.
the boss's plan.
But we could say that's coming from upstairs, and maybe it is. But I'm sure that Bill feels probably the same way after this has gone poorly. That he needs to make changes to his coaching staff. That he needs to obviously get the offense in a much better place, a healthier place. They got to clean things up and become a more organized operation. I thought it was a real microcosm of their struggles in the second quarter against Vegas. They had a 1st and goal at the Vegas 2. And I think Mac missed what should have been a touchdown.
Yeah.
And then he hits a touchdown, but it gets blown dead because the sideline, I think it was Patricia, of course, calls timeout.
Yep.
And wipes out the touchdown. Then they have another incompletion. Then they have to call another timeout. Now they burn 2 timeouts in like 20 seconds. And then on 4th and goal from the Vegas 1, false start, backs them up 6 yards. They kick the field goal. It's like Patriots fans know exactly the drive I'm talking about because that is just like, why aren't they efficient? Why aren't they well put together? And it all set up for, obviously, the cataclysmic event with Chandler Jones. But this stuff has been going on all year.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, it's good. I mean, I think if the Texans are doing what you just described, burning timeouts left and right, penalties, your coach calling a timeout to essentially remove a touchdown, then you have the killer penalty on Jonnu Smith. It's like, excuse me, we'd be frying other teams, but because it's New England, there's been this resistance to be like, no, they probably have their house in order. It's just these, they don't.
Well, it's
they
confusing too because their defense is excellently coached. They're number 2 in DVOA with a very sketchy group of cornerbacks and using guys at linebacker.
Yeah, but
that
who's
were
the coach?
Castaways, right? And like Uche. Now that Barmore's back, I'm very curious to see if this Bengals offensive line, which has been better this year, holds up against Uche, Barmore, and Juden. They have a better defense than they had a year ago. If they had Josh McDaniels still, I believe this team is 10-5 because they would just be a mediocre offense, and that'd be good enough.
They've only played 14 games, but they get credited with
9-5.
win.
I'm giving them 9-5.
The Bengals side of this has been my pick season. My lock season has been very similar to the Dallas Cowboys season. Started out with a ton of promise and almost juggernaut-like, and then in the last month or so, it's just it's not a total collapse. But things just don't feel right. You're just not in the right group. And I've realized, what I hope I've realized here, is one of the things I'm doing, I'm not locking good teams or teams I feel good about. So I'm going to lock a team I feel good about. The Cincinnati Bengals go into New England and taking care of a Patriots team that just feels like it's in all sorts of dire straits. Give me the team that's well coached, that's getting guys back healthy, that has Joe Burrow involved, and they believe they could be the number 1 seed in this AFC, so they are not going to lay down up there. They take care of business.
Look at how, I think we're Belichick. And Greg, I know you've not been huge on Zach Taylor, but on defense, for instance, the way that they adjusted against the Bucs.
They're so well coached on defense.
Right, they do. I can see why Belichick's into it. And to me, that spoke to who the Bengals are. Other teams, you question yourself. You fall into a pit. You allow the Bucs to play the best offense they have all year in that half, and they turn around and completely erased them. I mean, they made life so difficult for Brady. So I like this lock a lot for you.
This was my lock, and then I just felt it was bad juju to lock against my own
See what we
team.
do with Greg with the locks.
Yeah.
It's all this the endless self-questioning and
it's
this was my lock.
It's working, and you know.
It's kind of like I'm just watched Godfather with my the Lockfather watches the Godfather. With my parents. And,
I was saying with your children. It feels a little aggressive.
No, they were in bed. Michael goes to Italy after shooting the lieutenant and falls in love with an Italian woman. Real knockout.
That's how it works.
and they get married, and tragedy. I don't want to spoil this, but tragedy ends that union. Michael comes back to America and reunites with Kay Adams, no relation to the football analyst host, and marries her. And that's how I feel. I feel like my lock for Gregg, I say to you, you know you want to lock up the Bengals and come with me. I am the Italian woman that you'll leave. And you go back to America and you marry Kay, but you're not truly in love with your lock. Your true love.
Or with me.
Is the Bengals. Your true lock love is the Bengals. And instead you go home and you go with the teacher back in America that you don't truly love. Kay. That's, if somebody followed that, that's good.
I did get it.
There were some strange turns there, but I did follow it, I think, yeah.
It feels wrong to lock against your own team, but
I mean, you're a woman, and I like that.
I would be.
Interesting. Gregg, your final pick of the draft.
We're already at my final pick. I'll take Seahawks Chiefs. Oh, we got the prime team. Yes, that's what it is. Seahawks Chiefs, fun game. A lot of points. Love the points. Love the over. Love Geno Smith getting back on track here against this Chiefs defense. Think this Chiefs defense is very vulnerable. I know Tyler Lockett's out, and that's massive. And Ken Walker looks like he might be out too. So the Seahawks they do have some issues, and yet I feel like Geno is going to play a clean game because I just don't think the Chiefs defense.
They don't have their most reliable wide receiver, and the running back's out, and their defense can't play.
Totally compromised.
And Geno has to make every play to save this team. But I feel good about his chances in this game.
I don't trust this Chiefs defense. I think they've shown some vulnerabilities. They're playing a lot of rookies on the back end. I think the Chiefs are going to score a lot, and so then Geno, who made his first Pro Bowl on Wednesday.
I respect
that.
That
is pretty cool.
Yeah,
that is very cool.
Pretty incredible career turnaround. Let's just say what it is.
I think he'll be stuck in a position to score. Unfortunately, the Seahawks defense is also going to have to play in this game, and I would put the over-under for the Chiefs scoring around 35 points.
I'm with you, and the Geno Smith story has been awesome. Gregg, that's a victory for you coming out of the summer. But I would say that if you look at his metrics since Week 8, there's a couple things that are concerning. His passing grade, and passing grade is what it is, but it's gone from 4th to 29th. Since
his rating, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Gotcha.
Actually, it's more like, I think it's PFF passing grade, actually. Big time throw rate has gone from 3rd, which was so visible, from 3rd to 19th. Turnover-worthy plays have gone from 23rd most to 9th most. So those last two categories matter a lot, and it's like, I think a part of it is environment because the running game is dried up. Their defense has put them in a tough situation. Things were really good around Geno before, but now they're not, and it's like, who is Geno when things around him aren't working well?
And Geno, the Seahawks, who have a decision to make, they're seeing all sides of this now in terms of what they want their quarterback position in the future. That
maybe just in time.
It's not a shot on Geno, but it's like he's not going to carry your team when you need him. So maybe there's a young guy in the draft and you have a top pick that can be that guy. It's just something to think about before you pay Geno $35 million a year.
He needs more time, and I think this is a game, if you're a Seahawks fan, hopefully he gets it because they're a vertical offense. They run routes down the field that need time to develop, and he hasn't had that time also recently. I do kind of look at this Chiefs team. They're in a weird spot because they might be the 1 seed, and yet I think they have some pretty identifiable issues on this team. Number 1, turnovers. One of the league leaders in turning the ball over, -6 on the season now.
That's as I wrote in the power rankings, a puzzling data point for an 11-3 Super Bowl contender.
Right,
-6.
It's a lot of fumbles. I think Marcus Valdez-Scantling just in general is a problem because he's so unreliable that he'll make great plays and he'll kill you twice a week.
Aaron Rodgers could tell you that.
Like that turns into a turnover or it's a huge drop. I think the rookie cornerbacks, which I mentioned, and then maybe a little like Andy Reid is still playing like he doesn't have Michael Jordan as his quarterback. They went into overtime in that game in part because he's setting up for a 51-yard field goal at the end, in part because they don't go for a 4th and 2 on the 8-yard line. It's like Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. You really don't have to run it 3 times or throw little screens to set up Butker. Like, Show some aggression,
But also,
Andy Reid.
you
The
do
other
have-
coaches do.
I mean, like also in the past, you could count on Harrison Butker to not miss an extra point and that
Don't
field
care,
goal.
though. That's such a...
I'm just saying from another angle.
Right.
Like Butker's in a slump, and I think some of these great offenses, when you can't rely on your kicker, like you got El Problema.
We have This Guy Gets It, which is one of our great recurring series.
Mm-hmm.
I feel
When we
like
really need it, we dial it up.
we dial it up. This is another one because I like that. It's a Sesslerism. From another angle with Marc Sessler. It's pretty good.
It's good.
It typically
in the-
says like Gregg is correct about what he just said, but I'm going to try to counter it with another factoid
Like
that
he's
maybe
sneaky wrong, perhaps.
I don't think that Gregg was wrong. I just think
Backdoor
again,
wrong.
the reason the term exists, it's from another angle. We could say that Harrison Butker is not the guy you've relied on in the past. Right now, why is he slumping? He's had some injuries this season. That
I'm gonna launch
that killed them. They would have won that
Backdoor
game.
Wrong as another show. It's gonna have a lot of go in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, I think that's troubling.
All right, let's keep moving. Marc, you are up, my friend.
Well, I have no choices. I have 2 picks and there's 2 games left, so I guess I'll just like toy with you which one I pick first. I'm going to go Falcons at Ravens.
You're vastly overrating how we're hanging on what you choose, but go ahead.
You do enjoy power. We've heard in the
I
past.
do like power.
He likes it.
This Ravens team, you said it before. I don't know, like I keep hearing like
They're in trouble, man.
Am
I feel power.
Am I supposed to be excited about this Ravens team right now? It's just like
not
sort
with
of,
Lamar Jackson
well, by the
or
way,
Devin Duvernay.
I keep hearing that too, and like I know Lamar is like obviously a complete difference maker at his heights, but their offense was a problem before. Your tight end leads your team in receiving. Last week, you had 17 completions. Like half of them went to Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, and Josh Oliver. Devin Duvernay's out. Rashad Bateman's out. Sammy Watkins is the new guy you're focusing on. He currently ranks 72nd in yards per route and 82nd in catch rate. So I'm not sure what you're hoping he's going to come in and do. I think your anchor is just your defense, and you hope that, you know what, you're getting Desmond Ridder, who is totally wet behind the ears. And if you can shut down the ground game with Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson, and they've got the guys to do it, because I think they've got the best 2 linebackers playing together right now in the game, and Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith, interior linebackers. And I don't see any reason you don't win this necessarily, but I think teams are going to keep it tight because the Ravens are good for about 10 to 13 points a week right now. I mean, I thought that Huntley...
I'm surprised the Ravens are favored by 7. They are begging you.
That's absurd to
They're
me.
begging you to take the Falcons, which I never like it when they're begging you to
But
do anything.
that's
Stay
people not
away.
watching the Ravens the last couple of weeks.
It's also a little bit.
No. I think that's
The
them,
offense?
I think that's them thinking the Falcons are now either the worst team in the league or one of the 3
bottom
worst.
3
yeah.
or 4. Yeah, it's a little bit. I'm already nervous if I'm a Ravens fan, but a couple weeks ago they circled Christmas Eve, the 24th is Lamar's return, and the fact that he's not going to be back.
And then you got
It's like,
Pittsburgh and
what's going
Cincinnati
on?
next.
Is this going to be one of those injuries where keeps on getting backed up and then we don't see him again and they fall out? Are we seeing basically a rerun of last year right now?
It feels like it. I mean, there's a lot of similar things going on. Aside, maybe the defense is a lot
Well,
healthier.
the difference is last year they needed wins to get into the playoffs. They're in with a win this week.
They got to win though.
No, I get it,
it's
but they
gonna be
have
tough
3
for them
weeks.
to win right
It
now.
just feels like a ship coming into shore where you climb aboard and everyone on board is dead. It's like something happened to the ship out at sea. Like, that's what the Ravens feel like to me. Yeah, you're going to float into the playoff harbor, but, like, what arrives?
Godzilla.
Yeah, that's what happened.
I also
Mystery solved.
think they're as unlucky as any
This
team
is
in
a
the league.
Watergate-level disaster.
They were finally getting healthier other than Lamar. They actually had a lot of players back. Let's go through who they've lost just in the last week, not counting Lamar. Calais Campbell, my choice for their best player on their defense, having an incredible season. Marcus Peters, starting cornerback, not playing in this game. And then you mentioned Duvernay is out for the season with a broken foot from practice. That's just the last week. Those are 3 key players.
And they should win this game. And they are obviously – they've been through the wars, and the coaching staff is going to be hammering into their heads they need to get this game, because if you don't, you're 9-6. And then you got Pittsburgh at home, and that's going to be tough. That's going to be a tough game. And then you're at Cincinnati, when
And they're lucky
Cincinnati
they
might
beat-
have a lot to play for in that
right,
game.
and they beat Cincinnati, but, like, how different are those 2 teams since that Sunday night game?
They're in for a team that's 9-5. It feels very precarious for them right now. This is such a huge game in their season, and I think they'll respond and they'll win. But it's probably going to be like 13-10,
And you know
sweating
what?
it
But
out.
even if they get, their trajectory to me is like, you're going to lose a playoff game. Have a nice time.
I think they're
not going on a 3-game run with Lamar Jackson.
You got Lamar and a good defense. If you get a little healthier, I think you got a chance. And
good running game.
They also get a little break here. If Desmond Ridder doesn't get more comfortable as a passer, and maybe he will improve over the next few weeks, this is a nice matchup for their defense.
And they should know, no matter what happens, this is to your point, from another angle with Marc Sessler.
Yes.
Dan Hanzus sitting in this week. They need to attack that offense in the offseason, and they got to make that thing. They got to get that thing up to snuff. They got to get it up to snuff against the likes of Cincinnati and Kansas City.
I just don't know if
Buffalo.
you give Lamar Jackson like 2 great wide receivers that you're going to get the same thing that you get in Philadelphia or Dallas or somewhere else.
Let's try it.
What was your show again? Backdoor negotiations or something? Backdoor wrong.
Backdoor wrong.
I think you got to work on that.
I like that. I like the way those.
Well, that one's on after midnight. It's for a different
clearly.
audience. Let's see. Let's take a break. Taking a break? What does that mean?
Now let's do one last game and then.
Oh, yeah. We got one more game. In fact, Gravedigger, if you'd be so kind.
I would.
And I know nothing is kind when it comes to the Tennessee Titans right now to handle the last game on our draft. The Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans. Yes, Houston has 1 win. But here's an interesting stat, by the way, is the Titans in a most likely non-Ryan Tannehill world the rest of the season.
Yeah.
The Texans have either been ahead or tied in 7 games this year. They only have 1 win, but this is not a typical 1-15 type team. Or now 1-15-1. If you let them hang around, it gets dangerous. I know you're nervous about this game. With Malik Willis, it has to be multiplied by 7.
At least 7. That's what number he wears, so good call, though.
That's why I said it.
Center Ben Jones, dealing with a concussion, might miss the game. Right guard Nate Davis probably will miss the game, so the Titans down to 3 backup offensive linemen, plus Malik Willis. We'll see if Treylon Burks is back. We still don't really know.
Jeez, that's a tough concussion.
If I'm picking games here, I think I would pick the Texans. They've been really competitive in their last 2. The Titans aren't going to have a 90-plus yard drive, I don't think, with Malik Willis to go win the game. They definitely don't have Patrick Mahomes. They don't even have Jerick McKinnon. No, Derrick Henry is the one hope for the Titans in this game. If Derrick Henry does what he's done to Houston the last 5 times he's played them.
You need the 200-yard game again here.
It's so wild. You need it. They've been different defenses.
You don't want it.
It's always the
Wait,
Texans.
Ray Duns is out too, so you're down 3 offensive linemen or 4 depending on
3 starters and the top swing backup.
That's why you get Tannehill out of there.
The factory's on fire.
It's a different team. I am picking the Texans in this game on game day view, for instance. People should check that out on Friday afternoon. We'll be here.
Sure.
And,
You just spoiled what you're going to do, though.
It's on NFL.com/game
But
picks too. Many things to promote.
That doesn't change anything.
I mean, I don't really change the pick.
Stay tuned to see who I pick.
Yeah.
But I feel strongly that I
might surprise you with what I'm going to do.
Maybe I will change it by then if something crazy
Too
happens.
late. Everybody knows.
I haven't chosen the Texans to win a game all year, but they won in Tennessee, and that's worked out. They won in Tennessee.
I'm going to do something I've not done all year on NFL Game Day View.
Stay tuned.
Tune in.
Friday.
I can't wait for the offseason. I'm going to go to showman school with Marc and Dan.
Just come to our hearts. Hang out with us.
They've been playing better. So I looked at DVOA for the 4-game losing streak that Tennessee's been on. I guess this shouldn't be that big of a shock, but they are by far the worst team in the NFL over those 4 games in terms of offensive and defensive efficiency. They're not doing anything well.
I will tell you.
I got the name of the show.
What? Yeah.
I got the name of Marc and I's show. It's called The Showman Show, man, with a comment there.
I love it.
Can we get that on the lower third at some point so I can just see it? Because I think it's going to sing.
I have to tell you one thing, by the way.
It'll be more funny to Dan than anyone else, on screen and off.
The Showman Show, man.
I am on a roll when it comes to one aspect of this show.
What?
Is he going to do it?
No, I have another guy. Yeah.
Well, the processing, it's going to take us deep into the spring.
So why wait?
Okay.
Why wait another week if we're already talking deep spring? Chigo Okonkwo is my new guy.
Wait, that was one of my guys earlier in the season,
you
right?
got a guy conflict.
No.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Guy conflict.
Graver was there.
Gregg definitely shouted him out.
I said that's one of my guys. Who doesn't love Okonkwo?
Let's go back and check the tape.
You know what? This sounds like a case for Ted Becker.
I think he could
Reach out
see,
to him.
even if Gregg's taken 47 guys, so it's like there's some element of like maybe
Ted
don't
is
seat everyone in the
overworked.
same
Remember, I
part
had
of
a
the
whole thing.
restaurant.
They got to build the whole plane out of Okonkwo. Turn the whole
That's
offense
right.
into Okonkwo.
Well, I don't deny that you said that. I'm just denying that maybe Ted would come up with a different.
Ted Becker is in ill health
from
and
another
he's
angle.
overworked.
Ted Becker.
But he's also extremely passionate about his job, and I know we'll have this. You have the graphic? Can we see what it looks like? The Showman Show, man. That's pretty good.
It's perfect.
Pretty good. Coming soon.
We actually should make that
On
because
all platforms.
It looks when you see it, you just can visualize a show in text that way.
That we have to actually do that show in the off season.
All right.
It will come, and is Gregg the guest? And then we kind of teach him.
We'd sort of teach Gregg. We give him some pointers.
It's
Maybe
almost
bring
like a
guest
TED
on
Talk,
also.
and I'm in the audience.
Yeah,
It's a one-man audience.
a one Gregg audience.
It's you and me on a stage.
Yeah.
We'll figure out where, and then it's just a one-man audience, and it's Gregg. And it's just us just espousing
Maybe
our thoughts.
Bourbon Room too. We go back to if that goes well, they let us back to
maybe
do
the Showman Show man
Yeah.
is from the Bourbon Room
Yeah.
on January 18th. And you're in your Hollywood Nights jeans, and we're
But I think this
teaching.
shows why we're hosting that show, because we're just coming up with richer ideas for that show, even in the
Classic
moment.
Showman.
While Gregg is quietly listening and sort of just taking it in, sponge like.
A lot of notes I'll be taking.
Honestly, Dan, you're on fire. You got win Marc's old football magazines from another angle, and the Showman Showman all in today's
don't forget
pod.
about Backdoor Wrong.
Backdoor Wrong.
After dark.
And from another angle, we can throw that in as a.
Oh yeah.
I'm building out an entire program.
That's a network.
Like a
That's
network right
literally.
now.
You got to be careful. They might want all this for NFL Plus in the offseason.
Oh God, yeah. All right, well,
Just erase this.
I'll have to be compensated.
Yeah.
If I'm launching a sub network with all this programming.
Well, you sound like you're using a lot of my man hours too. I hope you're planning to pay me as well. And let's see what Ted Baxter does, or whatever his name is, Ted Bankley.
Ooh.
Well, let's start with giving the man respect.
Yeah, I know.
He's had the flu three times.
Ted Becker.
Ted Becker.
He does a great job up there in the office, the corporate.
Let's take a break and hit all these other things. Welcome to Around the NFL, presented by Barefoot Wines.
Last chance for the Steelers.
It's the season for miracles. And on the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, NFL Network is celebrating in style on Christmas Eve.
Let's go, man!
Raiders.
At the goal line, grab this!
Steelers.
You've got to be kidding me!
Live in prime time. The Holiday Classic. Christmas Eve at 8, only on NFL Network.
All right, here we go. We did the draft first this week because a lot of these games are games. Let's start with the Raiders, 6-8 at the Steelers. This is Saturday night. This is Christmas Eve night. So if you're not busy on Christmas Eve, you have football to watch. And, I know what the Raiders fans are thinking. Speaking of, like, Charlie Brown and the football being pulled on him, the Raiders are thinking, after everything that's happened this season, after that remarkable comeback to beat the Patriots, with the AFC playoff field, the wild card field, little wonky right now, and there's just a sliver of hope, they're going to ruin my Christmas Eve. That's what they're going to do. That's what the Raiders fans are thinking right now. And yet, and this is why earlier in the season, a few weeks back, I was kind of pumping up the Raiders. Every time they play a team, I'm like, I feel like they have a good chance to win this game, and I feel this way again against the Steelers. I think it's going to be a tough game in Pittsburgh in prime time. You're shaking your head, Mark, and I want to know why, because
I'll tell you why.
I do believe they have a chance to stack another win here. Why?
I'll tell you why. And first of all, I'm going to start right here. I'm switching my lock to the Steelers.
Whoa.
I like that.
I'll tell you why you like it. This is the anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. Franco Harris just passed away this week.
Yes, he did.
You tried to tell me that when you go to this stadium, that this place is not going to be absolutely, totally on fire. Derek Carr is 0-6 in games when it's less than 37 degrees. It's going to be at most 19 degrees. This is a Raiders go and die spot. The Steelers are going to absolutely celebrate this evening.
I agree
drop
with
a hammer on the Raiders.
If you throw out that Ravens game, you can't throw it out. It's a division game, though. Steelers are playing great football. I think the Steelers are vastly superior. They dominated Carolina, and I think they can stop. What
Did you say the Steelers are vastly superior?
I think the Steelers win this game handily too. I'm with them.
You should switch to that line too.
Do not.
That would be good showmanship.
See, you don't even need the TED Talk if you make the move.
I'm not gonna do it. I'm not a showman yet. I need the class. I think this is a team Mike Tomlin wants, though. They stopped the run well for the most part. They did it against Carolina. That's all you need to do against the Raiders, I think, to make them one-dimensional. They want to run the ball, and they've been running the ball great, and I think you can do that against Vegas. If you had started the season like 6 or 7 weeks ago, this is basically what Mike Tomlin dreamed of. If anything, I'm a little worried Kenny Pickett's coming back into the lineup here, because I thought that was the best game I've seen out of a quarterback week by any Steelers quarterback last week with Mitch Trubisky. I think the floor is higher, but the ceiling's a little lower with Kenny Pickett.
All right. I like the things you said. I like what you both said. You make a compelling case. I don't think the Steelers are vastly superior than the Raiders. I think they are playing much better of late, and I think it would not surprise me that when the season's over and Tomlin's doing his end-of-year press conference, if he calls this, one of the most rewarding coaching seasons of his career, because he has taken this team that could have easily, in the post-Big Ben era, with a rookie quarterback and injuries and some talent deficiency, this could have easily been a 4-13 year in Pittsburgh. But instead, here they are closing strong.
And like his losing record thing, they're going to win this game. I already told you that. But then they're going to play a compromised Ravens team potentially if Lamar's not back next week. Then you just got to beat the Browns at home. They're going 9-8.
Basically, these two teams need.
But these aren't the old Steelers, though, either. We're giving them a lot of respect here.
What's more I'm saying those opponents are not. You're not beating the Chiefs and Bills there. These are imperfect teams, and it's like what's more Mike Tomlin than them finishing 9-8 after all this malarkey?
So this is an NFL Network exclusive game in NFL Plus. And it's an elimination game. It's not the spiciest game in the weekend, but the loser's out, and the winner has hope. And the winner doesn't have the craziest amount of hope, at least going into Christmas. Basically, you got to win out, and you just got to hope that the AFC East teams, none of them top 9-8.
Right.
That for the Raiders, they are in if none of the AFC East teams top 9-8. They win the tiebreakers at 9-8 with any of the AFC East teams. It's a little wonkier for the Steelers, depending on the types of tie breaks, but it's not crazy.
The Steelers have one win against the winning team this year. It was Cincinnati, that weird game in Week 1 that they should have lost if Cincinnati hits an extra point. But still, their schedule ahead is the Raiders, who have been tripping over themselves all year, at Baltimore, a team, in, as Marc would say, dipped in chaos, and then Cleveland to end the season. It's not the easiest close to the season, but
it's totally possible.
I think is Josh Jacobs going to be able to run the ball against this defense? Does Derek Carr have one of those mind-numbing interceptions? Possible. Does Devontae Adams go for 180 yards? That's also possible to me. In prime time, one of the greats.
But you know what? He can do that and still lose. That's the thing. Like, I'm not really.
I see this as 24-21 Raiders.
How about 13-7 Steelers, the score of the Immaculate Reception?
Oh, look at you. Franco Harris, 72 years old. Rest in peace. One of the great players of that dynasty era, and one of the, I think it was voted by NFL the most memorable play or greatest play in NFL history was the Immaculate Reception. And I was reading about Franco Harris. I was surprised to learn that they didn't win the Super Bowl the year of the Immaculate Reception. I always thought that kind of kick-started the dynasty, or was in the middle of it. That was in 72, I believe, which was the Dolphins' perfect season. But that was kind of the first taste of magic for the organization, which had been terrible for years and years before Bradshaw and everybody arrived. And then they started winning all those titles. So
John Madden coaching the Raiders team that
year.
It
is kind of tempting to switch over on the lock, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to bring Christmas presents to all the boys and girls in the land. And the Rainmaker's coming out in Pittsburgh now. They're covering this 3 points on Christmas Eve. If you're running short, let's make it rain on the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception.
You guys have put a lot on that anniversary.
It's just that time of year. Like, maybe you didn't get that gift card for that one person, and here comes the Rainmaker.
I was just saying how the Raiders fans are flirting with a Christmas Eve disaster and Christmas being ruined. Now we got Marc's lock on the line. We got Greggy and his Rainmaker, which I know it's precious to him. There's a lot riding on this game all of a sudden.
You know
I'll be
what?
watching.
You know
I'll
what
be
that
watching.
is? Great showmanship.
You know what? He's already taking notes. He's not there.
Yeah.
I mean, not even close. But he is making progress.
By osmosis.
Yes. Let's head to Christmas Day. Packers at Dolphins. Oh, Marky. Oh, Marky.
What?
I know you despise the Packers, but keep an eye on the Packers here, because if they win this game, they are very much alive in the NFC playoff race. They need – Rodgers said it himself, and I kind of like it because players are always like, hey, listen, we just win the next game on our schedule. It's like, shut up. What he said after Monday Night Football and the win they had was over the Rams was like, listen, we needed to win X, Y, Z, and we needed all these other things to work out. And so far we've been winning the last 2 weeks, and all the things we've needed to happen have happened for the most part. So I just like a player showing the transparency. He's like, yeah, we need a big picture thing to come to our way. Now, here's the question. The Dolphins, who shows up here for the Dolphins because they look so good for large stretches of that Bills game, couldn't close it out. Now they're at home. They should take care of business. And as good as they've been playing or played on last Saturday against the Bills, they have lost 3 straight now in December.
Aaron Rodgers also was asked if he thought they could run the table. And he said, I do. Now we've got to play 3 better football teams, the Dolphins, Vikings, and Lions, but I do believe definitely. So, he said that before, but it's like there is maybe a turn here with Green Bay's, like the darkness of their season, and they seem so lost and things were just such a mess that they are probably looking at this as a real possibility, which it is. And I mean, Miami answered a lot of questions for me in that Bills game. It's kind of like one of the better losses you could have, I guess. It's costly to them, but like it changed the narrative on the Dolphins, where had they been beaten like a drum in Buffalo, it would have been like maybe the Dolphins are just falling off a cliff and we're never going to see that early season version again. Instead, they did the opposite. I thought one of the most hopeful things, because they've been so they've lacked balance, was that they were able to run the ball really well to the point where, like, after what Raheem Mostert did against Buffalo early, I thought they kind of could have maybe used more of that down the stretch, and you are dealing with one of the worst run defenses in the league in Green Bay. So do you seek that balance? Do you not put it all on Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? I still think you're going to get them every game, but maybe if you can run that way, you can keep the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands, and this is it's also at home. I like that for
Some
the Dolphins.
games can be as encouraging as they are frustrating. That's how I classified the Dolphins game against the Bills. It's a two-parter for me now, though. So it was like you showed up against Buffalo, didn't close, but you showed up. Win this game at home.
You have to.
In prime time against a Green Bay team that obviously took a big step back from last year, is playing better but not a great team. End the losing streak, and then basically punch your ticket to the playoffs in a most likely sense. You'll get to 9-6, and you should be able to find a way to navigate in from that point. This is another big test for the Dolphins for me.
Yeah, I love points in this game. I love it going over, because to me the Packers offense has solved their issues. Like, they're back. They're 7th in the league right now in efficiency over the course of the season. The run game is strong. The offensive line is playing well. Watson has changed the passing attack. They're not the old Packers. They're obviously not as good as they were at when Devontae Adams was there. But they're a really good offense, and this Dolphins defense has holes you can pick on in the back end. They're not great always defending the run, and so I think it's back and forth. I like Miami better, and I think the better ground game might win. Both teams might struggle to get off the field. 5 points feels like too much. It was 5 points earlier in the week. I think it's now 4. Either way, I think this is a fun little game. This is definitely the best game on Christmas. If you're strategizing, this is the best one.
Yeah, if they could, I would have flexed this game down to the late game, but we'll get to it. All right, let's hit Broncos at.
How can you not be romantic about football, man?
I agree with that.
Oh.
Yes, producer. Yeah, you cut that for a drop, I'm sure, Justin.
I get a lot of questions about that. I think that Justin is a.
Do you want to address that officially?
Yeah, because I don't know why that happened. Half the stuff that happens on the show just happens. It's like I think Justin's
accountability.
Justin does an incredible job, and he shows his value in increasing ways from show to show.
Thank you.
Well, you could say to
Justin,
him.
I
Yeah.
adore you and think that you're
Saying it
wonderful
to
at your job.
Yeah.
Saying it to
Marc,
everyone.
Mark's apologizing for letting you know how he really felt in that moment.
No, I just think it was the heat of the moment, which happens on this show.
I
It's
get
different
it.
than like, we're doing some stodgy thing and some like our emotions run free here. So
Mark gets cut off a lot, and I didn't mean to cut him off with that.
No, it's okay.
either.
Don't cut off Mark.
I just wanted to jump in to say that I think the Dolphins get right in this one. I'm locking up
Miami.
Nice. I like that.
Where are you in the standings? What are the standings? Do we
man,
have them?
it's hard to see where he is. He's so far like
I
he's
am
getting killed.
I am in last still. Nick was the only person who missed his lock last week out of all of us. But he's still 1 game ahead of me. Mark's 1 game ahead of the West Bros. Dan's 1 game ahead of Mark, and Gregg is 2 games ahead of Dan. So there's a
2 games
lot
clear.
of space.
I should just bring in the
separating us.
trophy for Gregg at this point.
Well, there's a lot of weeks
I
left.
don't think so. I think it's not enough runway to catch him at this point.
I'm with you.
Well, so-
I would have said
at
you could
some
have done
point,
that
are you going to update this tired bit?
I
It's
like
been going back
it does
for
bother
years.
you. It does bother you. So that's why it comes out of few things. As I've said many times on the show, one of the things about Gregg, and I respect you for it, Gregg, it's very hard to really get past the shield and really bother him. But for some reason, this one does.
Yeah.
This one we're like, oh, Gregg, there's no way you could catch it. You got the title every time. Every time I
You
get a
can
reaction.
bother Gregg, though. He won't show it, but you can bother him because the Pat and Gregg move is if you get a zinger off at Gregg, within 15 or 20 minutes, if there's enough time left in the show, he's gonna craft something that sends an arrow right through your neck.
Oh, we have something. If you want to fly that tweet.
Oh, well, I don't know if the timing at this point, it's a little late.
Well,
yes.
speaking of showman, you've just announced it, so.
Yeah, we're going to have to submit to the committee. I did write a tweet about Okonkwo over a month ago, and then just going to be submitting it to Ted Becker. It's up to Ted. I respect his
I don't
decision.
see in there, he's my guy, though. That's all. It was just like.
It's Ted Becker at That's My Guy at Outlook, I believe.
I think, Ted Becker is unpredictable, though. So, Gregg, you're operating logically, and I'm not disagreeing with your logic. I just think that Ted Becker's going to do what Ted Becker needs to do.
Ted, for all his warts, and obviously he's
his
alone.
immune system.
He hasn't seen his kids in years. He's had some issues with the law. He is very professional.
Yeah, he's very professional.
And,
Suddenly.
Yeah, and he takes his job seriously. And in this world, you don't always see that anymore.
He's not a group thinker. He's going to look at this through his own
And
lens.
he's not a corporate climber.
No.
He's like, I know this is my job and it's important. And when I see this tweet from Gregg, I will factor it in.
Yeah, he's also going to know what Gregg is attempting to do there.
He can't pull one on a fast one on Ted Becker.
So.
All right. Broncos at Rams. Russell Wilson, I believe, is back for this game after they gave him the extra week rest after the concussion the previous week. Baker Mayfield, still the quarterback for the Rams. His magic wore off at Lambeau Field. Threw for under 150 yards in that game. So here we are, the middle game. This looked like an awesome game, Gregg, back in September, but that's not always how it plays out. It is on Nickelodeon as well for the kids.
My guess is all the networks battled for this game, and that on paper, we were wondering before the show, why is Tony Romo doing this?
He's wondering that too.
On paper, this would be the most watched game of the entire year because I think Christmas, the couple
Games
times
aren't played
you've had,
there, though.
right? Yeah, you've seen that. Cortland Sutton's back. Russ is back. Baker still holds the ball too long. Michael Hoyt is fun for the Rams. I think that's all we need.
I mean, I would just say this game is hilarious to me because if back in, July, you took Sean McVay and Nathaniel Hackett into a booth and said, you're gonna forget this, but I'm gonna tell you right now what's happening to both of your teams. Come Christmas weekend when you face off on this Tony Romo, Jim Nantz game, and it's going to be a totally failed Russell Wilson, who is the most expensive flop job in the NFL, versus Baker Mayfield, who has been with the team for 2 weeks. You
Flop
would know
jobs with Marc Sessler.
You
also
would know
on the Dan
you would
Hanzus
know,
network.
what would Sean McVay's head explode? And by the way, Nathaniel Hackett, your stock will drop through the floor.
So this is a breakfast program. This is our morning show. Flop jobs over flapjacks. And it's Marc eating breakfast, which is in its own way kind of a show. Everybody wants to see Marc eat. And he's just discussing all the things that suck.
I think that's a good way to start any day.
2 4-10 teams. Hey, Rams want to build up like the fan base here and everything. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Broncos fans at this game.
Are there, though?
Any Rams fans coming to this game, reward their loyalty with a Christmas Day win. You know, if you're a Rams fan and you go, Jason Kleinman, our producer,
just walked in
one of our many, just walking in. He's
Schneider.
going with his family. What a great Jewish family thing to do on Christmas, by the way. Go to an NFL game. But any fan that's there
Jason
of any
Horowitz
denomination, reward them with a win on Christmas.
Absolutely. There it is. Go fill up SoFi Stadium.
From another angle, why put your family through this? But that's again from another angle. So
let's move to the late game on Christmas. It's time for Sunday Night Football pregame, presented by Barefoot One. It is the 6-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oh my God, more Buccaneers football. At the Arizona Cardinals, who are starting, I believe, Trace McSorley because
we're getting another Cardinals game on national television here.
I'm gonna have a talk with those guys in Park Avenue.
It's a tough
schedules.
They made a couple.
Gotta be able to flex these.
Couple
Christmas
gambles.
games.
I liked. Someone brought up like the Hard Knocks thought that Cardinals got all these back end of the season games while they're the Hard Knocks team.
I think 100%. We talked about that last week.
Yeah, which makes sense. I didn't want to misattribute. It was you.
Just a theory, but don't you think it's like?
I think you're right. I think you nailed it.
I kind of stopped watching that show, to be honest, too.
And now
Gregg and I were tracking it vaguely.
Now they're the worst team in the league. They would be number 32 right now on a neutral field for me.
Really? Yeah. I guess.
Along with
McSorley.
Along with the Falcons.
The defense isn't really playing.
We just called the Falcons.
I said bottom three.
Okay,
I said bottom three. I would put Cardinals would be an underdog to every team.
Yeah. Well, plus just everything happening around them is like you want to turn your eyes away from it as soon as possible. It's no longer fun to watch.
It's a toughie, and the Buccaneers, that was so many disappointing losses for the Bucs this year. I think last week's was the worst because it was such a tease. They looked so good getting up on a great Cincinnati team, 17-0, and everything was working. So for it to kind of absolute a snowball into hell type second half, it just like once again reaffirmed to everyone, the fan base, the team, everyone upstairs in that building, like, we are not very good. Like, we had a chance here to really jumpstart our season, and instead it ended in an embarrassing home loss. So they obviously, the schedule works out for them here with the Cardinals getting the third-string quarterback. The division sets up for them. There's no team, there's no Jaguars in this Southern division making a charge, looking to steal the division. Just take care of business. And yet, to Marc's viewpoint on things sometimes, like, does it even matter? Because when this team or whatever team's coming out of the South, it's just a countdown to their
I did tell you that the NFC South winner would win a home playoff game, though. And I think if of all those teams, it would be the Bucs because I could see them randomly.
But why? Why?
Well, no, I'm not saying it's to anyone's pleasure. I just could see
the
Bucs.
I mean, but like what? I know you could just say Tom Brady, but like why will this team be the team?
Because things are weird.
I've got a reason.
This season's so weird.
So that first half of that game, Tony Romo was going crazy about it. Maybe almost too crazy.
He almost fainted.
But he was really impressed that they started changing what they do offensively. Like, they're such a static team. And it's like the rest of the NFL, we'll start doing motion. Let's start doing play action on early downs. Let's stop running on early downs. And it worked for a half, and then they had 4 turnovers in 11 plays. So if they're changing their approach offensively, that could help. And then the schedule, certainly. You can't clinch the division this week, but you close with the Panthers and Falcons. Can you see them winning 3 straight games and feeling better about themselves? I could. I kind of think that will happen.
To battle my own point, I still think they're the team that we
from another angle.
From another angle of my own angle. We keep saying this is the team that will somehow kind of bend their issues.
I
and
just
it's like,
mean
this is who they are.
No, I'm with you, but you can't go against your own angle. From another angle, from my own angle.
But you can though, because it is.
He's a showman,
right? You could call it hypocritical, but it's not. You're actually like adding another layer to the show, Gregg.
One of the segments of the show.
You continue to learn how.
One of the segments of the show is both sides of the fence with Marc Sessler.
That one is
that's a segment. That's a segment
one.
within that show.
Yeah.
And CBS reported, Jonathan Jones, that the Cardinals are expected to part ways with GM Steve Keim in the offseason.
Well, and I wonder if Cliff Kingsbury could be one of these, get rid of him before the season to find out, get an early jump on the search. I don't know who's running the search.
Indefinite. I wonder if the sensitivity around the Keim situation will stop them from doing anything like that, but before the end of Week 18. But they'll say goodbye to Keim, and then
what if they kind of want Sean Payton in there to work with?
I'm saying, you can say goodbye to Keim, and then you hire a new GM, or maybe you hire Sean Payton to do it all. But it does feel like this thing's about to.
I hate when these teams hire Corn Ferry to find their new coach. It's always annoying to me.
I mean, this hasn't been mentioned on the show, and I feel like we should, and this probably will be the last time we mention Keim, is that the offensive line coach is alleging that he didn't do anything because of mistaken identity, and he looks exactly like Steve Keim.
Where's this? He said that?
It was in a statement release. Respecting a woman is a core value for me. The mysterious allegations by the Cardinals are untrue. I want to clear my name. Be it a miscommunication or mistaken identity, my family and I will cooperate fully and honestly with the NFL Cardinals or any agency to restore my
bit of a bombshell.
Reputation. It was a couple weeks ago, though.
Then Keim disappears shortly thereafter. Okay, why isn't Hard Knocks talking about this stuff?
I've not tracked the last 2 episodes, Greg, but I feel like they've dodged some of these issues.
I actually watched a couple ones ago to see if you'd get anything extra from Kyler, the Kyler thing, and I've just sort of fast forwarded, and they didn't give you any insight. It was
What's the point of the show?
Well, the summertime Hard Knocks, it's hope season. There's optimism. You cover the team. You cover the underdogs, setbacks, victories. If you're going to do in-season Hard Knocks, I think you got to cover it warts and all.
Embrace it, yeah.
Because you're in battle with these teams, and there are battles that you win and there are battles that you lose, and if you only cover the battles you win and gloss over everything else, is it the best program?
No, it's not Hard Knocks by the New York Times, though, obviously. So there's other things going on here.
Is that another show idea?
It is now.
Reach out to New York Times. No, NFL Films has done brilliant work over the years, but there are challenges inherent to doing the in-season show.
I don't even put it on HBO. I think it's the team saying, we're gonna, even though all this is out there, we're gonna act like if you're not seeing it on Hard Knocks, it doesn't exist.
They got some tough luck with this team. This might have been the #1 team not to follow.
I think you're right about that. Finally, there is a Monday night game, Monday Night Football from Lucas Oil Stadium. More Colts in primetime. Okay. More Chargers in primetime. We could live with that.
This is a weird Christmas
Chargers at Colts, 8-6 Chargers, who are in very good position now to make the playoffs. In fact, I don't want to hear any excuses around the Chargers this year. I know they're still missing guys, and they're not fully whole, but they've gotten guys back. They're playing much better of late. Herbert's playing out of his mind now. Mike Williams has made a huge difference. They're all the way up to number 9 in the Dan Hanzus power rankings.
Wow.
And here we are now. You have the Colts, your next 3 opponents. Colts, Rams, Broncos. Combined record 12-29-1. You are 8-6 Chargers. It is murky as hell at the bottom of the wild card race, but you absolutely need to get out of there with at least 10 wins and go to the dance. No excuses.
Absolutely. Maybe the only excuse is that they're going against BDN. Mr. Nick Foles is back in the mix, starting this game over Matt Ryan.
Why are you so excited about this?
I'm not.
Be good to see Nick again.
I'm fine with that too.
He adds a little juice
But
to my Monday night recap. I don't know.
This is great.
You know what? He actually played very well.
You're so loyal.
In the one game that he played last year against Russell Wilson, no one will ever remember that game, but it was like a shootout Bears-Seahawks, and the Bears had a crazy comeback. Nick Foles was a member of the Bears. I don't think he'll do it this week, though, because he's on the Colts, and he's going against an improving Chargers defense. That's what's been really encouraging. I think Brandon Staley's kind of been in his bag the last 2 weeks with really good game plans. They're getting a pass rush. Derwin James appears to be trending towards a return. Joey Bosa might return in the next week or two. Probably not this week. Rashawn Slater might return before the playoffs.
Look out.
They could actually be a team you don't want to face. And if they can keep it going defensively, that changes this team because they had so many problems defensively, and they should be able to shut down this Colts team.
You said this about the Vikings, that you wanted to see the Vikings finally just obliterate someone. and just flex their muscles and enough with this. Like the Chargers are kind of the AFC's Vikings on some level, and that 7 of their 8 wins have been by 6 or fewer points. Like they just don't blow teams out, and it's like their defense has gotten so much better. I think the idea that Brandon Staley was going to get usurped by Sean Payton is always possible, but I think he's done a lot to say.
That was your idea.
But I mean, I think he's also mentioned like the West Coast. I want a California team. I want a quarterback. It's like the Chargers just are that team. And it's like, I don't know. Brandon Staley's plan looks like it exists today right now. But you're right. Like this is the most Chargery type thing would be to not close out a playoff spot here. You just simply have to go do it.
You do not come out of these last 3 games with at least 2 wins, and you really should win all 3 if we are to take you seriously. And yeah, the Matt Ryan thing, it's really a bummer. It's sad for a guy that has had statistically a Hall of Fame considered career, an MVP. Everybody knows about 28-3. Now, considering where his career is, the level of his play, the fact that obviously the Colts are moving on, there's a pretty decent chance that 33-0 to 39-36 is his last game he ever plays.
Right.
So he has the most famous playoff meltdown ever. Not him alone, but he played a part in it, and his career could end on the greatest comeback or the greatest collapse ever by a team. It's kind of some Greek tragedy stuff.
I think it could go higher than that too, because he's still owed $12 million guaranteed. They signed up for not just this year, but you go to over the cap, he's owed $12 million guaranteed next season. And if they do just
he'll
cut
never
him,
play for them again.
Right, and if they just cut him, it's an $18 million dead money hit. So again, that's on Chris Ballard for how many million years in a row?
Not according to the owner.
Well, I just wonder if things could change, just because it's like Chris Ballard. How many years do you get to solve the quarterback?
I would not have liked to be in that conversation or to hear that conversation between Jeff Saturday and Matt Ryan. That's brutal.
No. Yeah, but if you're from another angle, if I'm Matt Ryan, I'm kind of like, get me out of here. I don't mind.
He's obviously a proud guy and a competitor and a good team. It's kind of sad. It's tough.
You are a factory of sadness!
One last thing on this game. The Chargers, as they
just
line
because
up.
they're an AFC South team doesn't, Justin.
As they start this game, they might know that they can clinch a playoff spot this week. So they need a Raiders loss.
Mm-hmm.
Possible. The Rainmaker believes so, and Marc locked it up. So
Sure.
A Jets loss, and either a Pats or a Dolphins loss. It's a somewhat realistic scenario for the Chargers to go into this game knowing they can clinch this week.
That'd be great for them.
Very good. There's the Week 16 preview. Reminder, no Friday Fun show this week, but we will have a TNF recap special with my dad and myself, Jets Jaguars. And remember, we're launching at some point our own network now. And some of the programming will include From Another Angle with Marc Sessler, The Showman Show, Man. We have Backdoor Wrong. That's an after-hour show. What else? Oh, we had Flapjacks.
And Flop Jobs.
Flapjacks and Flop Jobs, which is our
Flop
morning show.
Jobs over Flapjacks.
Yeah.
Flop Jobs over
I feel like
Flapjacks.
Flop Jobs is so good on its own.
Well,
we got Flapjacks in the title.
Yeah, but it's our morning show, though.
That's our morning show. Okay.
I know you could have it, but that's just the title.
But yeah,
Flop Jobs.
Wimbledon's a nice title, but Breakfast at Wimbledon adds a whole other layer to it. Right?
We're trying to brand it. That's all, Greg.
And don't forget the new game show, Win Marc's Old Football Magazines.
Win Marc's Old
Right,
Football
and I also
Magazines.
we're violently taking control of This Guy Gets It and pulling it from wherever it was before. Not sure where that was to this new network.
And I've also been in contact with Joe Rogan on some type of Ultimate Fighting type program.
It's a great
Just to add it in
network.
the mix.
It's going to change. It's going to bring cable television back to where it was 15 to 20 years ago.
Stupid. All right. Thank you to everybody. We'll see you. I was going to say Merry Christmas and all that, but we'll be back before then. So till Christmas Eve, heed the call.